Welcome to the Thunderdome Puckcast. It's your host, the Sports Moose, coming at you live here in the Sports Heap Man Cave studio. Before we get to it, of course, haven't said it in a while. I feel like I've been moving away from it. Before we get going, let's hit that intro. Hope you are enjoying. Is it Wednesday already? Short week, hopefully, for some of you guys. Welcome back to the Thunderdome Podcast. So excited you're here with me. If it's your first time here, of course, interactive show. We've got the live chat going, and your chats actually appear on the screen. So make sure you're doing that. Looks like we just got our first share, so if you're out there shared the stream, you get a nice message up on the live stream. So thanks to Jackie for the share. Welcome once again to the Thunderdome Podcast. This is your news source for what's going on all Tampa Bay Lightning, and right now really covering all the NHL until those NHL playoffs get going. If you're new around here, of course, this show is also available on podcast. So the audio from the show, I rip it and load it up to your favorite podcasting platform. That's going to be Apple, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you like listening to podcasts on iHeartRadio, we are distributing on there. And then, of course, if you like YouTube, higher quality videos, because the only bad thing about Facebook, I think their interactivity or interaction with everybody is awesome. But their videos are in 720p, and it really bothers me when I see our video and we're recording above 1080p. I think we're at 2.1k, and just bothers me to see that quality go to waste. So you can watch us on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel. Not as active as we've been before on YouTube, but we're still uploading our shows up there. If you like watching higher quality videos, we're on YouTube, so check us out on there as well. All right, how it works, of course, you'll have some information floating down below. Various statistics for the Lightning, and of course our Twitter handles. You'll see Emrod down there, who's my co-host for Balls, Brews, and Bros, coming at you live tomorrow as we celebrate 4th of July weekend, getting an early start, I hope. Emrod might be heading off to the beach, so it might be me, or we might delay the show. I probably should check in with him on that, if he's going to be on the show. I know he likes doing the beach for 4th of July weekend. But for now, we're going to talk hockey. We're going to have topics right down below. So we'll go around the NHL first. We'll hop right into our Wild and Canucks preview, Flames and Jets preview, and then we'll close out some happy news. Of course, 2020 Hall of Fame class being announced earlier last week. So we'll go over who was inducted and congratulate those guys. So I'll flop the camera now. So we'll actually have our topics right there in the middle, and then we'll highlight stuff in yellow as we move forward. So let's hop right into around the NHL. And I think what's becoming one of my favorite segments is the dumpster fire. There's the Buffalo Sabres. And I know we talked about this our last show 2 weeks ago. More news still keeps coming out, which it just keeps getting better. So we talked about, it was the same day as our show 2 weeks ago, where it's basically Black Wednesday in Buffalo, everyone being fired in the Buffalo front office and some of the coaching staff. But believe it or not, the news came out that they had to rehire some people because they accidentally fired people they did not mean to fire. That's how trigger happy they were, the Pegulas, were to get rid of everybody. They're like, you know what? Everyone just assume you're fired. And then they're like, oh, wait, we need people to run a team. So where's Jerry? Jerry's been fired. Oh, we need him back. So Pegulas actually had to hire back a few staffers that they had mistakenly let go. That story keeps getting better and better. We're talking about the entry draft later on in this segment. Buffalo, once again, no love for them in the entry draft lottery. They end up with the last pick of what was being thrown in the lottery. I think in their defense, they had the worst odds, so they ended up in the same slot. But you had teams like LA that came out as big winners, who were, I think, supposed to be the sixth team. We'll see the odds in a moment. They jumped up a few slots into the what's going to be the third overall pick, but technically the second team. We'll get into that in a second, where the NHL has thrown in a mystery team that gets the number one overall pick. We'll talk about my opinion on that. Then, of course, a lot of people calling for the Pegulas to finally sell the team. Focus those energies on the Buffalo Bills, right? Where they're getting a little bit better of a product in Buffalo. Maybe maybe those fans like them a little bit better. But if you're a Sabres fan right now, you are on your hands and knees praying for these people to sell it to some actual hockey people. Again, the main picture you find of both of them, of Terry and Kim, are all in Buffalo Sabres gear and doing Buffalo Sabres task. Always in Buffalo Bills regalia and Buffalo Bills task, like holding helmets and footballs and being in their stadium. I had to scroll down probably for a good 10 seconds before I found them anywhere near an ice rink, anywhere near the Buffalo Sabres rink. So I think that goes without saying. Most of their photo ops and interests lie in football. So maybe that's where they should stay. Let's keep them over there. And I know plenty of my Buffalo Sabres fan friends feel the same way about the Pegulas. Some news, some COVID news, of course, and part of that being the progression of the hub cities. And actually, I have to update this graphic because there's been some changes. One of the big changes was Vancouver being given the axe. I think we found that out maybe last week. Rumor has it that Las Vegas is now actually getting the axe. No Vegas. This whole big idea of having the Stanley Cup and being awarded in Vegas, not a thing. Vegas is potentially out due to some issues with, I guess, COVID rates going up in Nevada, which I don't think is entirely true. I think they've actually been fairly compliant. Those casinos have been closed down for a couple months, and they're just recently starting to go back. So maybe it's a precaution, being that a lot of the states that opened early are seeing rises in COVID-19 cases. I don't know. But right now it looks like both hub cities are slated to be in Canada. Right now the front runners and who it's likely going to be, the announcement hopefully coming later this week or after the 4th of July weekend. Toronto, which we expected, but unexpectedly, and not known for their nightlife, which I guess is a good thing if you're going to be playing in a bubble. Edmonton being the second potential hub city. So you're going to have Toronto and Edmonton. You go from Canadian cities not even sniffing this to all of a sudden both hub cities are going to be in Canada. This is going to be great homecoming, right? With most teams being predominantly Canadian. That's pretty exciting. This might be the closest a Canadian team gets to winning the Stanley Cup, is that it's going to be awarded in Canada. Canadian team, of course, not winning a cup since 92, 93. So the Stanley Cup will be awarded in Canada. We'll see if it's a Canadian team who gets there. We're previewing, I think, 3 teams from Canada today in today's previews of the Canucks, Flames, and Jets. So is it going to be one of them? Are they going to be one of the first Canadian teams to finally get across that finish line? We're going to wait and see. But that's the latest news on the hubs. Looking like Toronto and Edmonton now, with Las Vegas getting the big red X. I have to give them the thumbs down on that one. Sorry, Vegas. So sorry, Vegas. All right. Let's hop over to the next item of business. the draft, the entry draft, the big surprise. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I was going nuts about this as I kind of tuned in a little bit late, but at the perfect time because there's this mystery team that was revealed to have the number 1 overall pick. So when you look at the board, and let's look at the left first, those were the relative odds of landing the your pick, right? So Ottawa, fortunately enough, with the Erik Karlsson trade a year or two ago, 2 first-round picks in this draft, and they've been so bad lately that they're both top 5 picks. They had a great shot at winning the number 1 overall pick, combining those percentages, almost a 25% chance at hitting the number 1 spot. And Detroit coming in at, was it 16.5, I think. LA, Anaheim, Jersey, and Buffalo lagging in there. And then the rest of those teams would come from the teams that lose out in the play-in round and then the first round of the playoffs, I would assume, as teams drop out. Actually, I think it'd be all play-in round teams, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. So 8 play-in round teams would then fall into those lines for the first round pick. However, so you'll see the draft order below. LA moving up a couple slots. So LA kind of the big winner here. Ottawa, tough sledding for them that they didn't end up somehow with 3 and 4. Detroit sneaking in there. LA, the big winner here. Detroit was expected to have that second overall pick. Then Jersey and Buffalo at the bottom of Anaheim right there, kind of where they were expected to be. But the NHL pulling a fast one here with the mystery pick for the number 1 overall pick. And guess who gets it? It's going to be one of the 8 teams that loses in the draft, in the play-in round or the preliminary round. So it's not even going to be a team that absolutely needs the number 1 overall pick. It's going to be one of the teams that lose, that barely made the playoffs, I guess. It could be a team that could have outright made the playoffs and is upset. I mean, we have Nashville on upset alert. And we'll find out today if we have any other of these teams on upset alert and next week in the Eastern Conference. So we will wait and see who's going to be that mystery team once the play-in rounds are done. So I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like this was a super cheesy gimmick to get some airtime, get some attention on sports media and even some national media. I assume the press in Canada were going crazy with this because this is unprecedented. This is crazy. Having just a team in a middle of the pack team somehow randomly end up with the number 1 pick. You know, I kind of get it. Get some interest in there. Throw a curveball, whatnot. Get some media coverage. But I just feel this is kind of cheesy. Kind of a cheesy way to get some media coverage. But I understand because, you know, we're getting to a point where, and we've talked about it on Balls, Brews, and Bros on Triple B, that you have all these sports teams that are competing now for your attention as everyone's coming online in July and August and whatnot. Everyone is competing for your hard-earned attention because they've been laid off for about 4 months, and now it's like, oh, who's going to make the biggest news splash? Oh, here's the MLB. They're having a dramatic labor strike. We don't know if they're going to play. Oh, here they go. They're going to play. And the NBA, similarly, well, we're going to play in a bubble. There's people testing positive. Are we going to get to Orlando? We're kind of going to have a play-in game, but we could have done a better job. MLS coming up with the World Cup-style tournament. I just feel, and even the NFL to a degree, with some of the news surrounding Kaepernick and trying to recruit him, and some of the other intention with the NFL dedicating themselves to playing a 100% season with potentially 100% fans in attendance. I mean, if everyone's trying to make noise and start making some noise on sports media. So I'm guessing this was the NHL's attempt at that to be relevant. We'll see how it works out. I mean, some of the other news, too, coming out a little bit unrelated to the draft, more so to the Hub Cities conversation, was hot off the rumor mill. There's a potential that up to 75% of all NHL players don't even want to play in this season. Could they choose not to? I think the MLB's made that a choice, and we've had a few exercise that right to not play. But at the same time, man, if you have a product where 75% of your teams don't want to play, or your players don't want to play, I mean, that's not good. Potential bad look. I think a lot of people are siding with the players here, and I don't necessarily know where I lie, because we kind of treated it a little bit harshly on Triple B, but at the same time, you're an entertainer. This is your job, and you have access to the best doctors in the world. And I hate being the cattle call guy. I don't like looking at athletes as commodities. We're all human beings. We're all people. But at the same time, you have access to resources. You're going to be quote unquote pretty safe. I guess it's up to you if you want to give up making a couple $1,000,000 and wait till next year. I guess that's on you, and that's fine. So I'm curious to see what the NHL is going to be able to do. There are also rumors that they've come to an agreement on the Phase 3 and Phase 4 timeline. Thanks, Chaz, for the like. Looks like Chaz is on board. Another one there with DJ Khaled. The timeline is being agreed upon by the NHLPA, so we'll have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see where they end up. I'm nervous, but not that nervous. It kind of caught my attention that there were a few articles written about some of the players not wanting to play, and especially if it's big name players, it's not going to work. It's going to be a Stanley Cup that means nothing. I guess the Lightning are at a slight advantage with COVID-19 working through the team. A couple players testing positive, a couple of their staff, so hopefully they come out stronger on the end of that. All right, enough about around the NHL. Let's hop into our previews. I know that's why we're all here. Wild and Canucks. I think this is going to be a really interesting series, and I know I've said this a couple times over the last few episodes, what do stats mean, especially when you've been out of playing for 3 to 4 months? Do the stats mean anything? That's all we have. That's all we have to go on, so that's what my judgments are going off of, and some of my calls on the series going on. So Wild and Canucks, a tale of two seasons. One team with a pretty solid core and head coach, and I would say on the up and up, and then got another team who has an interim head coach, really struggled to find themselves, got some pretty terrible goaltending most of the year until their backup came to save the day. That's right, I'm talking about the Minnesota Wild on that one. Devin Dubnyk having a pretty god-awful year. They're going to have to trust in Alex Stalock, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Vancouver is one of those teams that I think has been building pretty well. They've gotten some of their older players on their way out. Do they still have? I think Miller's on the Ducks now. That's right. They've got their what looks to be a young stud goalie in the works. Actually, two of them, because Markstrom is really good as well, and he's young. He's in his mid to older 20s. So he's still got some time left, and they have a stud prospect goalie, Thatcher Demko, who's been playing a little bit this year, hasn't played particularly well. So you're probably going to see Jonas Markstrom in the net for the Canucks. Well, let's get to the matchup, and let's talk particulars. This is a really interesting matchup, but I think overall a pretty easy matchup to call. Again, looking at statistics only. We don't know what's going to fly out of the box once we get this going 4 months later. But when you're looking at offense and defense, it was so even. Actually, it was really eerie how even it was. Even points-wise, I believe they've played the same number of games. They're pretty much even on points. And when you're looking at the statistics and the standings, I mean, Minnesota pretty even on the goal differential. I think a slight advantage would go to Vancouver. I think they have a plus 10 goal differential. Looking at power play and penalty kill, pretty much even. I mean, a slight advantage, I would call it for probably Vancouver. I mean, that a little bit higher on the PK. Minnesota mid-70s on the penalty kill. So really the advantage is going to be how often Minnesota makes trips to the penalty box. Power play was the advantage went to Vancouver too. They were getting close to 25%, while Minnesota was closer to 20%. That all makes a big difference in the playoffs, where it just takes one play that could cost you the game. So when you're looking on 5-on-5 play, really shooting percentage wise on 5-on-5, not counting power play or PK time, shot percentage was seen as dead even, and even the save percentage among goalies, despite Debnik having a pretty crappy year. I think a lot of damage coming on the power play, on the penalty kill for the Wild, which is why you see their PK down in the lower half of the league. But you have to look at it 5-on-5. Yes, a slight advantage I think goes, slightly to the Wild. Both of the teams, when you're looking at a kind of a Corsi or Fenwick type of evaluation on 5-on-5 play, actually had puck position under 50%, with the advantage actually going to Minnesota. But again, it's all a wash. It's all going to come down to goaltending and coaching, in my opinion. Minnesota a slight advantage in high danger opportunities, but again, the conversion rate of those scoring chances, Vancouver actually had a slight advantage, so that's why their goal scoring is up. Stats and goal. Devin Dubnyk was a Vezina finalist, wasn't he, a few years ago, or even as early as last year? He had been spectacular ever since coming over from Edmonton. .890 save percentage, and it looks like, .335. That's in the bottom tier of your starters / backups with over 25 games played. They've had to depend on Alex Stalock, .910 save percentage. That's 2.67 goals against. Those aren't stellar numbers, but this is a guy you're going to have to depend on. You're going to have to depend on Alex Stalock to extend your season in a 5-game series against the Vancouver Canucks, who have gotten pretty good goaltending from Markstrom. Markstrom's at almost a .920 save percentage. Goals against 2.75. Stalock with a slight advantage there. But again, on the whole, Vancouver's going to score more goals, and I just think Vancouver's going to have a better overall approach, especially if things get messy with the special teams play. Like I said, we talked about Thatcher Demko, .905 save percentage, 3 over goals against average over 3, not great. I don't expect to see him much, if at all, in this series. So it's going to be Markstrom, and if I had to put money, it's going to be Stalock for the Wild. And again, the coaching advantage goes to Vancouver. Travis Green right now, kind of like a lot of teams are doing, are bringing up their AHL coaches. He spent some time with Utica, was pretty successful there with the AHL club for the Canucks, but has been pretty mediocre in the NHL since 2017. I think this is their first foray into the playoffs. Vancouver, 7 seed, right? So they would have made the playoffs this year outright anyway, which is good. First time Vancouver's been in there in a couple of years. But I think the only reason they have the advantage is because Minnesota has an interim head coach. You're looking at Dean Evason or Evanson. Bruce Boudreau got fired. Good old Brucey. We all know him from the Washington Capitals days. He was fired earlier this year when Minnesota was really tanking and not playing well. And again, really only able to muster a 10 seed and sneak into the playoffs, basically because of the extended playoffs this year and the whole Central Division being basically mediocre, other than like St. Louis and Colorado. So I think it's a decisive victory for the Canucks in a 5-game series. I just don't think Stalock can get hot and have an impact. I think Vancouver wins this series pretty easily, despite offense and defense being equal. I'm rating them as equal, but the advantages are going to come kind of intangibles, goaltending, coaching, and the special teams. So I think an easy series to call. Probably the series I'm most excited to watch, however, is going to be your Calgary Jets series. I think the Calgary Jets series is going to be spectacular. Probably the best play-in series. I hope I'm not hyping it up too much. Of course, there are your stars, Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau, and Patrick Laine for the Jets. Jets coming in pretty hot. I think the Jets are overlooked, and just the way it worked out with points percentage, are actually the lower ranked team. But they have more points because they played, I guess, one more extra game than the Flames. But they've been hot. They were playing pretty well as we were getting into mid-March for the cancellation of the league, or the postponement of the league, where the Flames really weren't playing well defensively. Dave Rich really not mediocre goaltending at best, and Cam Talbot not really playing that great either. So really defensive struggles. I mean, there's no doubt that Calgary can score, but when you're letting in more than you're scoring, it's not going to be a favorable outcome for you 9 times out of 10. Probably 10 times out of 10. If you're not scoring more than the opponent in the game, you're probably going to lose. So I think what you're looking at, a pretty even record again, 80 points for the Jets, 79 for the Flames. But as you were looking at the tail of the tape here, I really think that it's pretty decisively a Winnipeg series. Here we go. Emrah joining us on chat. All right. I'm happy to see that. The co-host of Triple B, he's here on our Facebook account, saying that the Flames are overrated, took advantage of an injured opponent. Could be the... Oh, here we go. We've got a good pun here. Now that health is back up, you'll see the Flame go out. That is excellent hockey analysis there by Emrod. I appreciate that. Actually, you're not wrong. I think the Flames had been... Their division isn't the strongest, and they took advantage of that a little bit. But I think as everyone is coming back from injury, hypothetically, I think you're going to see their weaknesses just be highlighted. And I think Winnipeg is a team built for the playoffs. They haven't had success. They did get to the conference finals, I think, last year, and we'll talk about Paul Maurice in a moment. But I think they're built for the playoffs, despite being the lower seed. I think, if you want to call this upset alert, call it upset alert. Winnipeg taking out the Flames, probably 3-1 or something like that. No doubt that Calgary has the advantage on offense. I think you can't doubt that. Johnny Gaudreau, of course. I think was he leading the team in points? I'll have to pull up the Flames points to see who's leading them in points this season, and in goals as well. So a couple young studs coming through Calgary, but overall I like the way Winnipeg is built. Goal differential, we talked about letting in more goals than you're scoring. Calgary right now at a -10, Winnipeg at a +12. So I think that's something to consider. Calgary's PK, not bad at 82, but their power play is right around 20%. Winnipeg at 20, and their PK is actually down at 77. So special teams, really where Calgary has an advantage, as well as offense. As long as Winnipeg stays out of the box, I think they're going to be okay. They're excellent at 5-on-5 hockey. I think they have some of the higher Fenwick and Corsi scores when you're looking at the whole league. Shot percentage is pretty even when you're looking at 5-on-5 between the two teams. But again, Winnipeg, sizable advantage in save percentage. And this is because you're getting a Vezina-type season from Connor Hellebuck. He's going to win the Vezina this year. Best goalie in the league by far this year. Should win that award hands down. I think right now he's at a .922 save percentage, at a .257 goals against average. Best in the league, I think, on both accounts for goalies who've played over 50 games, which he has. I think he leads the league in games played as well. So just amazing that he can even have those numbers. Calgary is more of a puck possession team, and again, that kind of goes with being overall being more productive on offense. But again, they run at a net goal deficit, so that's really where their problem is they're not getting the defense and the goaltending that they need to have. They hold the edge when you're looking at scoring chances in general, and even from high danger areas, kind of in the slot area and the circles. But really, what I found interesting was that the conversion of those, so their finish the percentage finishing for high danger opportunities is actually the same between Calgary and Winnipeg. And Calgary had a huge percentage advantage at this. Really, Winnipeg had fewer scoring chances and high danger chances, but their finish percent is the same. So it really means that Winnipeg takes advantage of what they have, and they're scoring goals when they have to score goals. So, and it really, honestly, makes their offense potentially lethal in a playoff type atmosphere, in a playoff type situation, I think, where scoring chances are pretty thin. And if you're able to convert on those more often than not, I'm going to take Winnipeg and their goaltending and defense. Kind of to finish it off, of course, Dave Rittich, who's the goalie for the Flames. Average year, 907 save percentage, 2.97 on the goals against average. Again, probably more indicative of defense not being necessarily Calgary's strong suit. And when you're looking at coaching, of course, Calgary with an interim head coach, Jeff Ward, really not too much on him, no record. So really just going along for the ride. And we talked about Paul Maurice. I mean, probably one of my favorite regular season coaches. I think he's very respectable and has coached Winnipeg since 2014. So you're looking at season 6, season 7 with the Jets. Jets have been pretty competitive. Pretty good for a small market team. I mean, Winnipeg still, even though they're in Canada, small market team. Their stadium holds 15,000. So their revenue dollars are a little bit less than what you could expect from other teams. But when you look at his track record, sure, he's had success in Carolina and a few other stops. I think in Toronto he had a stop in the regular season. But when he gets to the playoffs, he just can't get it done. I mean, the closest he gotten, I think, was last year into the conference finals. Thanks for the like, Emrod. If you guys like the stream, feel free to share. You get another fun little video if you share. But he just can't get the job done. Hasn't won a cup. I think he lost in the finals. I don't know if it was with Carolina. Don't quote me on that. But he did have a loss in the Stanley Cup finals. So he's gotten there, but he just can't convert. He hasn't won that cup yet. So I like the build of this Winnipeg team. I don't know if I like them to go all the way, but I think they could give teams like Colorado and St. Louis some trouble if they're able to get that far. So the official pick of the Thunderdome Puckcast for this series is the Winnipeg Jets. Probably in 4 games, maybe 5 games. We'll give it to them. All right, getting close to the end of our podcast. Thanks so much for sticking it out. Let's talk Hall of Fame inductees real quick, and we'll call it a show. Of course, 6 big names going in. Big ones you'll recognize, of course. Female player going in. Canada's goalie for a couple World Cups and a couple gold medal winners in the Olympics. St. Pierre, so female going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's awesome. The big names you'll see there, Marian Hossa, a lot of time with Ottawa, and of course with the Chicago Blackhawks. And one of my favorite players, Jarona Ginla, really pushing the color barrier, late 90s, early 2000s, as more and more black players joined the NHL and are being successful in the NHL. So it's great to see really Jarona Ginla pushing that forward and during his time, and now we're seeing players like Wayne Simmons, Evander Kane really becoming stars in the league. So really a forerunner at the NHL. And then Kenny Holland, as a executive, I think Hossa, apologize for that. Maybe that's the way the Chicagoans pronounce that, Hossa. So Kenny Holland, of course, longtime Detroit Red Wings GM, putting together some teams for Detroit before they kind of were forced to sell everything, and now Steve Yzerman is there running the show. So we'll see if Stevie Y can pull some of his lightning magic there over to Detroit. But Ken Holland getting into the Hall of Fame, and then of course Wilson. And Carlos, can you tell me about Wilson? The Blackhawks. That was one guy I wasn't too familiar with. It looks like he's retiring as a Blackhawk. And we talked about St. Pierre, and then part of the Oilers, I think Stanley Cup runs in the 80s low as well. But I'm pumped for Jerome. Jerome, probably one of my favorite players growing up and watching him in the Lightning battle back in 2004. Him and Vinny dropping the gloves, of course, probably hit one of his more epic moments. And, of course, like a lot of older players do at the end of their career, a little bit of a journeyman. Played for a few different teams, a la Jaromir Jagr. Great scorer and defenseman. I'll have to look him up. I didn't pull his info for the end part here. Kind of like Jaromir Jagr, made a couple cup runs with Colorado and Boston and so on and so forth. Oh, last of the no helmet breed, yes. That is true. The no helmet pictured there, so that's great to see. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of a 70s circa photo there. So anyway, congratulations to our 2020 Hall of Fame inductees. All right, everybody. Brings us to the end of our podcast. Thanks so much. Again, reminder, if you like listening to us on the radio or on your smart device, feel free to look up our podcast. Thunderdome Puckcast, should be able to find it pretty easily on your favorite device. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you use iHeartRadio for podcasts, I guess we're on there. It's being distributed there. YouTube channel, not active so much there, but we do put our videos on there. Again, just because their resolution's a little bit better than Facebook. I love the interactivity of Facebook and chat showing up and everything, but YouTube has a cleaner picture, so we'll throw that on YouTube. And, of course, our archive is always here on the Sports Heat page. Make sure you're sharing us as well. I think we hit 55 likes this week, which is pretty awesome. Appreciate the support from family and friends. Keep it going. And we should have a Triple B episode tomorrow. I'll have to see if Emrod is still there. Emrod, chime in if you're in for tomorrow. I know you like going to the beach for 4th of July, so he may not be in. We might take the weekend off and get some sports news for next week. Didn't Jagr lead the Panthers in goals year before last? He actually did. Yes, Chaz. Good call on that. I think he was their points leader too. Probably one of his last seasons before he finally hung it up. He actually might be playing. Is he playing in the KHL in Russia? He might be playing the KHL in Russia, or at least playing maybe one last hurrah. And I think he's Slovakian, so playing in Slovakia. So looks like Emrod's in for tomorrow. We'll have some Triple B action for you. I imagine we'll talk about Cam Newton. We'll talk a little bit more. There's another good story that I wanted to hop on too. What else was going on in the NFL? Really, Cam Newton's a big story there. I'm pretty excited to talk about his contract and what we think. What kind of is New England a Super Bowl favorite now? That's going to be our topic of discussion. So make sure you join us tomorrow, same time, same place, for some Triple B with Emrod. And if you have some topics you want us to talk about as well, feel free to send those via comment, and we'll throw that in as well. We'll get the weekend going right. Long weekend for everybody. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Moose_TSH for my tweets, at Emrod_TSH for Emrod. We will see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Go Bolts.